You have chosen poorly. Welcome to Primary Technology, the show about the tech news that matters. Today, we are going back into the iPad event, doing follow-up, things that we missed, and we have a bunch of questions from you, our community, and we're going to help you decide which iPad to get, if that's even possible. Plus, there's been a lot of backlash against Apple's Crush ad. We're going to talk about that, and a grab bag of topics like Sonos headphones have leaked, smart home tech that is dying, and more. This episode is brought to you by you, the members who support the show directly. I'm one of your hosts, Stephen Robles, and joining me now, back in the studio, no longer live from the show floor, my friend Jason Aten. How's it going, Jason?
It's good to be back in a setup that I have control over. Let's just say that.
Right. Not in a co-working space with dozens of people watching you record.
Right. It was very, and by dozens of people, we don't mean the live audience. What we mean is I was literally in a room with a glass wall, and on the other side of that wall were just people doing things, and so it was very weird.
that's a co-working space life.
Yes.
I used to record in a co-working space, and when I was doing the Apple Insider podcast, and it was always awkward because you had to reserve the recording room, and so you have like an hour, and they would be very, strict about like once your time is up, your time would be up, and so we would get towards the end of the show recording, and I'd be like, William, I gotta go, like someone's knocking on the door. It was always very stressful. So,
oh boy.
Thankful don't have to do that. So, before we jump into all the iPad stuff, a 5-star review, one from Pablo Felix, longtime friend, personal friend, I know Pablo, and a longtime listener. So, thank you, Pablo. If you have not yet, leave us a 5-star rating and review in Apple Podcasts. That helps our ranking in the top charts, and you can let us know if you have battery percentage on or off in that review. But I also want to mention our community is growing, which is really exciting. So if you didn't know, we have a community that you can join completely for free. It's at social.primarytech.fm, and it is grow. We have 141 members right now, which is amazing, and everybody's commenting. We actually did a submit your iPad questions from the event, and that's what we're going to be using for our Q&A. So if you want to be a part of that, we posted our live stream from the iPad event there. That's where we announced it first, which, by the way, we had over 150 people tune in live for our post-event recap, which is amazing. Thank you for those who tuned in live. And the live stream has gotten over like 800 replays. So that was really successful. Awesome. Is kind of like a bonus episode for this week. So really appreciate that. And our goal still on YouTube is 1,000 subscribers. So help us get there. We're closing in on 800 right now. So we want to get to 1,000, maybe by dub. That's a good goal. 1,000 by dub. There we go.
I like that.
All right. iPad event Redux. We have to talk about some things that have come out since the event, as creators have posted some videos and things like that. I want to talk about what we didn't get, which one of the rumors was that the Apple Pencil, which now we know is the Apple Pencil Pro, you'd be able to like flip it around and erase with the back. We did not get that, just to be clear. You can't flip the new Apple Pencil Pro around. But I do feel like the new gestures are probably more useful because you can have multiple things going on just from the tip and you don't have to flip it around. So I don't think I missed it.
Right, and you still have the tap feature, right? The same way you could get to the eraser before, you can do now. And I know some people don't like that gesture. It's never been a problem for me. I've heard people like it's not reliable. Like if you're drawing and you need to erase, you just tap it and then you just go back over it. It's always worked. I don't know. It's just not that complicated. It seems easier than having to turn the thing around and scrape the screen off with the backside of the Apple Pencil.
Well, that is true. I actually use it in Fairwrite because you can program that gesture to play pause. So I can double tap my Apple Pencil and just play while I'm editing the podcast. I do have one curious question. I won't be able to answer this until I get my Apple Pencil Pro next week, which we did order stuff. We're going to talk about what we bought, and everything arrives for me Wednesday, May 15th, next Wednesday. But on my Apple Pencil, I actually have this little grip. This is from, I think it's Paperlike. This was the Canupsi branded Apple Pencil grip. I'm showing it on YouTube. And I'm curious if this will work with the new Apple Pencil Pro squeeze gesture. I'm not sure if it will be too thick to actually register the squeeze. I imagine the barrel roll, which you can actually roll the Apple Pencil to change tools and drawing styles, which I'm not sure how that'll work with the podcast editing I do on my iPad. But this Paperlike grip, I'm not sure. I imagine you'll still feel a squeeze.
Yeah, I don't know if you'll. So the squeeze gesture is, there's nothing that actually moves, right? Like it's not malleable or anything. It's completely just capacitive or whatever they call it. And then there's a haptic engine motor thing that vibrates on the inside that makes it feel like you're squeezing it. So as long as the the Pencil Pro is able to register that there's that pressure, I would imagine it would still work. I don't know if you'll feel it, but yeah.
Right. I did actually message the creator of Fairlight, which is the app I use to edit all the podcasts, this podcast on my iPad. And he's a one-man show. He makes the app Fairlight. And, he heard about all the new gestures for Apple Pencil at the same time we did during the event. So he's not exactly sure how he's going to incorporate them all. But he is investigating that. And I'm excited to see how third parties, use all these new gestures in their apps. One other thing I wanted to mention, the Nano-Texture on the new iPad Pro. So a couple things here. I'm going to share this video and the link to this tweet will be in the show notes as well. But if you're watching on YouTube, this was a video from Brian Tong. He was at the event. You probably saw him there, right?
Yes, I did. Yep.
Yeah, there you go. So Brian Tong, he shared this video. This is the Nano-Texture iPad Pro, which is only available on the 1 and 2 terabyte models, the Nano-Texture part. And the Nano Edge to Glass, I was like, what am I hearing? I'm hearing Brian Tong's voice because I didn't mute the video. The glass on the bezel is not Nano-Texture. So when you are seeing it's a glossy bezel with a Nano-Texture or matte finish screen. And I imagine, I don't know if you noticed that while you were there in person, but some are saying that it looks kind of funky. I mean, what did you get to see that?
Yeah, so I just sent you a photo that I think illustrates it really well. I mean, the video obviously illustrates it very well, but this was, if you remember when we did the live show and we were talking about it, I was like, oh yeah, that's what I was looking at. And because there was a point at which they were showing me the iPads, and I'm like, does that one have a screen protector on it? Like that, I've never ever in an Apple store or at an event seen anything but the naked robotic, the naked devices, unless it's an Apple case or whatever. So it didn't occur to me at the time that that's what that was when I took this photo, but it definitely made a huge difference. It was noticeable. You can look on the edges, you can see that the bezel is just glossy like you'd previously expect. And actually, if you look at the iPad Pro on the left there, you can see in the right-hand side bezel a huge reflection of a light, right?
But
true. Then there's nothing immediately to the left of it, right? Like it just, the rest of it, there's nothing. So,
but it does, and this is why I did not go with the Nano-Texture, which we're going to talk about what we bought, but I did not go with it because I've heard a couple people say you do lose some of the deep, rich blacks when you go with the Nano-Texture and some color saturation because just the nature of that screen technology, it just doesn't have that sharpness. You lose some sharpness. And so, I don't care about glare as much. I'm usually here in the studio, and I want this OLED screen to have the best display possible. And so it seemed like the Nano-Texture, you would be compromising on some of the benefits of the display. So I chose not to do that.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly what the physics here is, but I think essentially the light, when it hits the display, that Nano-Texture, it's like diffusing all of the light across it. So you're essentially getting like sort of a wash as opposed to points of light that create glare. It's just sort of like diffusing that. So yeah, you're not getting the glare, so you're not getting like the highlight points of it. You're just getting an overall, like, you're right, you wouldn't get the same, because if you look at one of the glossy iPads, or they don't call it glossy, just normal ones.
They do call it glossy now when you go to order it. They say glossy or Nano-Texture.
But when you look at them, and I'll send you this photo real quick, the bezel and the iPad are basically identical in terms of the blackness that you see, right? And so there's a dramatic difference between the two. So yeah, so the thing you care about is that super deep contrast of the black versus the highlights. Then the glossy would be better. Right.
And that's what I went. One other thing I thought was funny, I heard MKBHD point this out in his video. The iPad Air, this is the new iPad Air. The 11-inch is 1.02 pounds, whereas the iPad Air 13-inch is 1.36 pounds. If you compare the Air to the Pro, the iPad Pro 11-inch is less than a pound, 0.98, and the 13-inch is 1.28. So in a weird turn of events, the iPad Pro is lighter than the iPad Air. The iPad Air is heavier.
I don't know that I think Air doesn't. Right. Obviously, when it originally came out, the iPad Air was faster and lighter than the iPad. Right. Like that was what it meant. It hasn't meant that for quite a while because it is still faster than the base iPad, and I guess it was still technically lighter. But the point was not that's not the spot that it occupies in the lineup anymore. It's just
Right.
like the default middle one, right? It's better than the normal because it's got an M processor. But I did see a lot of people making a big deal about the fact that now the Pro is lighter, but I don't know that really matters because the iPad Air is still lighter than the iPad.
Okay, yeah, fair. I just think it's funny, like Air, because MacBook Air still has that as like a quality about the airness. Like MacBook Pro versus MacBook Air, the MacBook Air is lighter. So,
but it wasn't true when there was a MacBook.
That is true. That 12-inch MacBook, which can I just say, Apple, if you're listening, stick an M4 in a 12-inch MacBook, billions of sales.
It'll melt.
Billions.
It'll just melt. Although I will tell you, I spent more time than I should have yesterday trying to find a photo on the internet of someone with a 12-inch MacBook on a music stand. Because you were trying to find...
I can't listen. I can't even, Jason. I can't. Okay, I have to ask you this question once we're done with these follow-ups. But I'm writing this question in our notes. Why do iPads make people so angry? Okay, we'll cover that in a second. We'll cover that in a second. People are so mad about if you enjoy using an iPad. Anyway, we'll talk about that in a second. I also thought that I posted a screenshot of the Nano-Texture Care, the Apple support article. This is for the Pro Display XDR, which is different. And so I'm curious if you heard in the hands-on or if you asked anybody about it. But if you were to get a Pro Display XDR, which is the only other, I guess no, that's not true. The Studio Display also you can get Nano-Texture. For both of those, Apple says to use only the polishing cloth that came with your Studio Display, Pro Display XDR, or iMac. I don't think the iMac had.
No, but there is a polishing cloth that you can get with it.
Okay, sure. Well, when the Pro Display XDR came out, I remember a lot in the news of like, you have to be careful because the Nano-Texture process is this and that. Use the Apple polishing cloths that cost $30 or whatever, and like any other polishing cloth, you're going to mess something up. And so I'm curious, there's not a support article yet on the Nano-Texture iPads. There is a polishing cloth that comes with it if you get, I don't know if it comes with all iPad Pros or just the Nano-Texture ones, but I'm curious if the care instructions are going to be as particular for the Nano-Texture iPad Pros, and if so, how does that speak to durability? I'm not sure. Did you hear anything about that? Or
so there is a difference between the Nano-Texture on those monitor displays and the one on the iPad Pro. The Studio Display and the Pro Display XDR, they actually use, I think they said like lasers to etch a pattern on the thing. So it's actually a physical etching on it. Whereas on the iPad Pro, it's a chemical. I don't know if it's like a chemical etching or if it's just some kind of a texture somehow built in. But so it's not. There is a difference. My thought is Apple put it on a device that's designed to be touched with your fingers. I have to feel like they understand that people are going to be cleaning them. And I don't think, let's think about how, averse Apple is to creating, you don't really want SmudgeGate or, NanoGate or something like that. They would not have put this product out into the wild if they weren't pretty confident that it would be able to live up to the things that an iPad does. That doesn't mean that there won't be someone out there who's like, look at my Nano-Texture iPad after 6 months of scrubbing it with sandpaper. That's probably a thing that will happen. But because there's YouTubers, they can't wait to get a hold of those 13-inch Pros just to see how far they can bend them.
I am not one of those. I'm shaking my Apple Pencil. I am not one of those YouTubers, but I guarantee you there will be someone. I think I probably know who it's going to be. Is going to take that 13-inch thinnest Apple product ever, and try to like put it in some cargo pocket of his pants and sit on it and try and call a new Bengate.
Did you see the MKBHD overview where he literally talked about it and then he had the little face that popped up of, wasn't it? I think it was Jerry Rig Everything or whatever that like popped up.
Yes, it like popped up on the side. Like, listen, a 13-inch, 5.1 millimeter thick iPad. Guess what? You put it under enough pressure, it's gonna bend.
Yeah, you're not supposed to sit on them. They're not seat warmers. It's.
If you put it under a hydraulic press and crush the hopes and dreams of creatives everywhere. Well, we're going to talk about the ad in a second.
Yeah.
This is hashtag too soon. All right, let's talk about our current state of iPads, because I don't know if there was any more follow-up that we could talk about just yet. We're going to get these next week. We'll have them in hand for the next episode, which is amazing because they arrive on Wednesday, which is an interesting delivery. Usually it's like Fridays. Now it's Wednesday.
Yeah, I had to actually look and think about that because when I was writing sort of a summary article of the event, and I'm like, these are available, and I was like, wait, when are they available? The 15th? That's 15th. Kind of weird.
Yeah, 15th. I'm sorry. I'm a little distracted because I think my kids have moved around the objects on my shelves in the background of my video. I see my hourglass up here. Anyway, I have to fix all that when we're done recording. Anyway, it's fine. It looks okay. So, what do we have, and what did we buy? And then we're going to answer some of the questions that came in from our community. So, for the last probably 5 or 6 months. This has been my only iPad, the trusty iPad mini, which Tim Cook did say one line about. I went back and watched the whole event, and he was like, and we still have the small but mighty iPad mini. It's like, I don't know if you could say it's mighty anymore. It doesn't have an M chip, doesn't have a ProMotion screen, but whatever. But I'm iPad mini only because if you remember the saga, my wife had actually dropped her M1 iPad Pro, which she was using for sheet music. Like, that was her computer. It was like the only computing device she has. And the sleep button stopped working and then also caused it to like do a boot loop. I actually popped that button out, but you can't put it to sleep with that. So I actually am letting one of my kids use it, and there's a shortcut on the home screen to lock the screen because you can't use the sleep button, which that's the thing you can do. Build a shortcut that locks the screen. But anyway, so I actually gave my M2 12.9-inch iPad Pro to my wife, so she's been using that. And that's why I've only been doing this, holding out on getting a new iPad for new ones to launch. So this is my only one. The Mini, honestly, it does great. I edit this podcast on the Mini. I read ebooks on this Mini. I'll browse the web sometimes on it. But this has been my only iPad with just the Apple Folio case. And that's it. So I was excited for these new ones. You just said a second ago you have 4 Apple Pencils in front of you. How many iPads you got sitting around?
Well, okay, I shouldn't have said that because the reason I made the joke about having 4 Apple Pencils in front of me is because the screen now has 4 Apple Pencils on it, but I really do. True. But the problem is they're all from previous review units that have been sent to me, and I put everything back in a box, and then I forget, oh shoot, I have an Apple Pencil over there. So I probably should just put a bunch of these in a Ziploc bag and put a stamp on it and send them back to Cupertino. But I do actually own one. But
wait. So do you have a review Apple Pencil unit from like years ago?
These are all the same. These are all the, what do they call it? The Apple Pencil
the USB-C ones?
Well, they're all like the ones that would come with either the iPad Air or the iPad Pro. So they're like I have had the one that when they introduced the 10th generation iPad and they sent out the weird one. I did have one of those.
Right.
And then they also sent at that time one of the original, because they also sent you the dongle so that you could like review the dongle, which is those I did not have a problem remembering to send back because they didn't work with anything else, right? But Apple Pencils are so ubiquitous that like you pick one up, snap it to the side, and it's like, now this is my Apple Pencil, right? And so last night my wife brought me one in that was like under the seat of a car, and she's like, do you need this? And I'm like, I had no idea it still existed. It's like just fine.
I'm very curious. We're going to talk about it on next week's show, but I'm going to test all like this current 2nd gen Apple Pencil with the new iPad Pro, which supposedly doesn't work because the magnets are in a different place. And a lot of people were asking on social media, I think this one will work with the new iPad Pro, but the new Apple Pencil, it does not.
No, and the reason is, so you could, because I did ask about this, you could probably, speaking of jerry rig, get it to attach to the top, just because there's still magnets in both pieces, but they will not be aligned to charge or to pair. And so you could technically, if you just wanted to carry around your current Apple Pencil on your new iPad, but it won't do anything. Because the problem is, it's not that there's something different about the pencil signal going to it's that they won't pair to each other because they don't align the way that they're supposed to. So you could stick it on the side, and I would assume that it's probably true that you could stick the Pencil Pro on the side of an existing iPad maybe, but it'd be a weird alignment. You would not like it, Stephen, because you are very particular about how your pencil aligns.
Which, listen, basic Apple guy, I know he's going to, when I put the Apple Pencil on my iPad, I put the tip of the Apple Pencil pointing up towards the volume buttons, like if this was an Evelyn inch, because I see Apple doing it the opposite way in all the videos. Apple's no, I don't like it.
See, in my life, I've never once thought about what direction it's pointing.
Listen, I'm very particular about things. Anyway, I'm gonna try it anyways. I'm curious, like if you can, like if you have this Apple Pencil, the old one with the new iPad Pro, if you can like kind of slowly float it along the edge and eventually it like says it's charging. I don't know. I'm gonna try a bunch of weird things with it. I'm also so if you get just say a new iPad Pro, one of the new M4s, your two pencil options then I guess are the Apple Pencil Pro and the USB-C one.
Correct.
Is that?
Yep.
Oh. Which I guess
and that's just because you can attach it physically to it, so it'll pair and charge that way. That's essentially so. People think that there's some sort of like voodoo reason that Apple is limiting things this way. It's just will it charge and will it pair? And if the answer to that is yes, you can use whatever Apple Pencil meets that criteria. But just think about the current Apple Pencil, and by current I mean the one you could walk into a store and buy right now, versus the Pencil Pro. The magnets in there are different in different places, and so you can't. And I don't really know the exact mechanics of how an Apple Pencil, what it needs from the device in order to initiate pairing, because they just pair over Bluetooth, I'm pretty sure. But there's got to be like some kind of NFC or something in there between the two that's like connect, and then it'll Bluetooth pair. So if you could fake that somehow, maybe it would connect, but then you wouldn't be able to charge it. So like you'd have a one-time use Apple Pencil.
You know, I have to say, I did not think about this, but like if my iPad mini is sitting around, when I was using the 2 iPad lifestyle, I had my 12.9 inch and this one, I would move my Apple Pencil from my mini to my iPad Pro.
Yeah.
Just back and forth.
All the time.
It's super easy. You just attach it, and then it's paired to this one, attached to the other one. So with the Apple Pencil Pro that I get next week, I will not be able to do that. It can only be used by the new M4 iPad. That's kind of...
But also, you won't have to do that. It's not,
I know.
No one's making you buy another second-gen Apple Pencil. You can just use the one that you have. So, okay, am I supposed to explain what I have?
Yes, please. Yeah, what do you have?
I use the 11-inch iPad Pro. To me, this is the perfect size iPad. I love it. This is the M2 version. I don't know. It doesn't have. It's probably got 256 or 512 storage because whatever. I don't store things on it. And then I also have an iPad Mini that I love, and it's great for reading things. But the problem for me with the iPad Mini, one, it's not worth enough to sell, so that's sad. So I can't really. There's no reason to sell it. But it's a great reading device, but it's unfortunately it's still an iPad, which means I start reading things on the Kindle app, and I'm just like suddenly distracted by, I read something and it's like, oh, what about this? And I start looking for. So I actually have a Kindle for that, and I don't know why I still have an iPad Mini. But you asked me that one time. You're like, what are you doing using reading a Kindle? I'm like, because if I had anything else right now, I would stop reading immediately and do other things. So we do have a collection of. We have a 10th gen iPad. We have not the M1 Air, the one that came before that still had the form factor, which by the way, I still like that home button. Anyway, for kids, it's perfect. Those are the devices our boys use, is a 10th gen iPad and an iPad Air. And honestly, that whatever that is, a 4th gen iPad Air, I don't know. It's the pre-M series. We sadly bought that 3 months before they released the M series, but I'm not even sad because it's so good. It is so incredibly good. The only thing you don't get is the new form factor stuff. And then we have a collection of iPads that no longer work, like a 2nd gen iPad Air and like a 2nd gen iPad Mini that you can't even update the software. You can't even use the Kindle app. It would be the perfect e-reader for me because Safari doesn't work on it anymore. But you can't even upload the Kindle app. Right. Because it's so old, and like the way that Apple does the App Store, it's like, nope, sorry, we don't know where those files are to give them to you. It's like, come on, like, so side loading. If side loading comes, we are going to resurrect that iPad. So anyway,
you could just delete the Safari app from your iPad Mini. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I could, but then would it be an iPad?
Well, or you could do screen time and disable it that way.
But I also know the screen time password.
You got to let your wife set a screen time passcode so you don't know it, and then you're tempted. But anyway, I get it. So I saw someone on social media saying Nano-Texture Display on an iPad Mini for reading. Mm-hmm. Now that would be amazing, because then you could like read outside, Nano-Texture, no glare. I think that would be amazing. And also, I would love it for promotion. I don't know if the iPad Mini is ever going to get promotion, but I'm still holding out.
Promise you it will not.
Thanks a lot, Jason.
I know. I'm just being candid with you. Like,
I know.
It's also never going to get another spec bump, so let's just be honest. Now, wait a
minute. Because people are asking. I know that's one of the questions in our community. You don't think this fall we'll at least get it a little spec bump? Do you think it's dead?
I think that it is like the M1 MacBook Air. It'll just continue to be a product in the lineup until for some reason people stop buying them, and at which point you'll never have heard of it again. I don't think it's the Newton, but I think it's more like I think it's great. It's like the 12 mini and the 13 mini, the iPhones. Like it's like they just I think you can still buy a 13 mini maybe. I don't know. I should probably look before I say that. But there was a while that they continued just selling that old 13 mini because they had them in a box in Tim Cook's office, and he's like, "Well, let's get these out of here."
All right. Well, so what did we buy? I bought an 11-inch iPad Pro.
Ooh, you went back to the 11-inch. Okay.
I went back to the 11-inch because I honestly agree with your assessment. I had an 11-inch from 2018 to like 2021, whenever the mini OLED or mini LED display came out on the 12.9. I had the 11-inch for years, love that form factor, and because the majority that I do is editing podcasts, the big screen is too unwieldy because I hold it as a tablet while I'm editing the podcast with Apple Pencil, and so I really do love the 11-inch size. And I already have a 14-inch MacBook Pro, so if I want a larger screen or if I'm working, like I can use that. So I do really love the 11-inch. So I went 11-inch M4 iPad Pro, 1 terabyte, because I work with a lot of WAV files, so I like having some storage. I did get the cellular model, and sometimes I get that and don't pay for the cellular just because I don't use it very often, but I like having the option, especially if I do end up going on a trip. So I did get cellular, and of course, I got it in silver, and I got the new white Magic Keyboard and the Apple Pencil Pro. And one last question before you share what you bought. The new Magic Keyboard, I didn't see anybody really show this off. Does it seem to bend any more than the old one, or is it the same viewing angles pretty much?
I can't answer that definitively. I actually think it bends slightly less.
Oh, no.
Well, but hear me out. Only because the front of the iPad does not protrude as much over what is now the function row of keys. So I feel like, that cantilever, I think that angle is slightly less. But again, I'm just saying that from like memory. I could be wrong about that.
Okay. So what did you buy, if anything?
Yeah, I didn't buy anything. I did not buy a single thing. So that doesn't mean that I never will buy something. I just did not buy. Well, first of all, I was in New York City, like running up and down the streets to get to podcast recordings and get to briefings, and so it just wasn't at the top of my mind. But I am very interested in the 11-inch Pro, probably.
Right.
It's tough for me because I do feel like the 11-inch Pro is the best iPad. It is certainly not the best size device if you want something that might potentially replace a computer. So there is always a time when I use the larger size. Like in the past, I've reviewed the 12.9 iPad Pro, and I'm like, yep, I should get one of these for sure. And then you put in a Magic Keyboard, and it weighs more than my child, and I'm like, never mind. I'm never going to do this. I'm never going to carry this around as a replacement for a computer. I'm always going to still have like a MacBook Air or a MacBook Pro or whatever. So to me, like I want to just do iPad things, and I think the 11-inch is fantastic. So if at some point I do get one, it will definitely be the 11-inch Pro. I don't know that I would spring for the terabyte because, again, like so much of what I would use is either streaming or in the cloud or, file management is actually pretty easy. To me, the thing that makes the biggest difference is like how big's your photo library? Because even if you don't have them all downloaded, if you have 80,000 photos, even the proxies are still going to take up some space on your device. And then are you the kind of person that if you go on a plane, you're going to want to download a bunch of content like podcasts or videos? Podcasts don't take up any space, but movies do. So, yeah. I didn't buy anything at this point. I mean, I'm looking forward to like reviewing them and stuff, and that will give me a better opportunity to decide if I actually, want to buy something.
Let me answer this question, too, because we had someone ask in our community, is the Magic Keyboard, the function row, the same as like a MacBook Pro? And so here's the new function row of keys on the iPad Pro Magic Keyboard. You have display brightness, expose, spotlight, Siri, do not disturb, media controls, volume, and you do get an escape key on the top left and a lock screen on the top right. So that's the iPad Magic Keyboard function row of keys. And on a MacBook Pro, you get the Escape, Screen Brightness, Expose, Siri, or Spotlight, Siri, Do Not Disturb, Media Controls, and then you have the Touch ID button instead of the lock button. So I think it's actually the same keys. The same layout is a little different. The Escape key is larger on a MacBook Pro, but the same keys, same layout. I still don't understand why. I mean, backlit keyboard brightness. I feel like that's important, but
we used to have that. The Macs used to have that, but you don't even have it on the Mac anymore.
Yeah, you don't. And I'm looking now at the Magic Keyboard that I use with my Mac Studio. Yeah, it's the same function row of keys too. There's no keyboard. Well, it's not backlit anyways. The Magic Keyboard for
it'd be
Mac
real funny if they put backlit controls on that thing. It doesn't even have a light. Oh, we forgot something in that process. We gave you the key, we just didn't give you the light.
Terrible. All right, so that's what we bought. Now I want to talk about an article that you had, and then compare that to the people that yell at me on social media about the iPad. You had an article about the M4 iPad Pro. Apple is just showing off. And I think this goes to the conversation of the iPad hardware has been and continues to be incredible, but the software is still what leaves to be desired. So tell me, what was your overall take in this piece?
Well, and I wrote it essentially just kind of like wrote an overview of all the things that they announced, and it's like you look at the iPad Air, and basically everything you need to know about the current iPad Air is the previous iPad Pro, right? Like It is. It's like if you liked the 12.9-inch iPad Pro, you didn't have an M2 version, just upgrade to the iPad Air, because unless you really care about that display, and all of the displays on iPads are very good. They're all Retina. Like, they're very, very good. But unless you really needed that OLED or you really liked the mini LED that was on the previous one, it's literally the exact same physical size. It is the exact same physical. It's the exact same processor. It's the M2, right? So anyway, but then you get to the iPad Pro and they put the M4 in it, and I am trying to figure out what do you need an M4 in an iPad for? And I guess the truth is it will last you 6 years. That's good because it takes about that long to update the iPad Pros. But
6 years might be conservative. I mean, an M4 today, like my iPad 2, not Air 2, my iPad second generation still turns on, and you can use it.
You still do GarageBand in it?
No, I do not. I do not. But that thing is, what the iPad was 2011, so that's 12 years old for an iPad second generation, and it's unusable right now as far as you wouldn't want to, but it works. And so an M4 today, I mean, this could be a 10-year iPad for someone who.
Well, let's be honest, though. Anyone who's buying an M4 iPad Pro is not going to use it for 10 years. They will buy the M5 version the moment it drops, or the M6 or whatever it is. I'm going to let you finish, but that's part of my argument for the. But go ahead. I feel like I just got Kanye there. So anyway, but I
rapper beef instead Kendrick Lamar.
But I do feel as though the Apple, I think they are saying something that they do care about the iPad Pro. I do think that there are. I mean, the display alone did require some serious computational work that the M4 is able to provide, because it's powering two OLED displays stacked on top of each other, and there's all kinds of stuff that's happening. There was a really good description of this. I don't remember. Maybe it was on Connected. I can't remember for sure which other podcast it was on, where they were talking about an OLED display, not every pixel lights up at the exact same amount just by out of the box. So it has to calibrate and it has to keep track of this pixel if we want it to, it may be at 70% and this one needs to be at 40% for them to look the same. So it's got to do a whole lot of work there, and the M4 enables a lot of that stuff. But and there's also some stuff in the multicam support, the live multicam for Final Cut. That's certainly computationally involved. But I mean, you could do a whole lot of stuff in the with the M2 version, and there's a lot of people still rocking 2018 iPad Pros.
Yeah.
That are
and
still
there's no reason not to.
And so I just think that Apple is doing this because it can. Also, there's been a lot of discussion about basically TSMC kind of botched their original 3-nanometer process, which is what is in all of these current devices, and it was never going to last. It was never going to be the process that was going to continue on. And so the only reason that the devices that got the M3s got them is because Apple's like, no, but we bought them all, so you have to make them. But everyone was in a hurry. This was the argument I made in our community, where people were like, why would they put the M4? Because they wanted to be done with the M3 as quickly as possible, right? They just wanted to be done with it. So like, I wouldn't be surprised if this fall we see new MacBook Airs with M4s, even though they just came out with the M3s. So that's why Apple put that in there. My take was, I don't think the iPad Pro is going anywhere, and I think the company is serious about pushing Apple Silicon as fast and as far as it can, and I think that's good for us. Like it's good that it is continuing to push that as much as possible. So
I made people mad when I posted about iPad.
Yeah.
As I do. As you do. I think you're rubbing off on me. Just
this is true. Between the two of us, I am much more likely on a given day to make someone mad on the internet. So,
whenever there's new iPads that seem overpowered, everyone talks about how the software is the bottleneck, and why would it, I feel like the sentiment is, why would anyone buy an iPad or why would anyone buy an iPad that cost more than $300? And so I posted this showing, me and my wife, who we both have music degrees, we both use iPads for digital sheet music, and we use the iPad Pro. Now, a couple things. I'm not going to rehash all the arguments because I was replying to a lot of people. Like, if you are not someone who plays classical type music, it might not make sense why you need a bigger screen. But I will say one of the big reasons why we always went iPad Pro was for the bigger screen. I will say now that we have a 13-inch iPad Air, for musicians, I think that is a great machine. Also, if you're only doing digital sheet music, yes, a 2018 12.9-inch iPad Pro also is a great machine for digital sheet music. Like, I'm not saying get the new one just for this, but I was trying to argue that there are some use cases, I'm just trying to argue that use cases exist where the iPad, just by nature of its form factor and how it functions, is uniquely suited over a Mac. And one of the things I did was show these iPads on music stands, which had a bunch of people then text me links to music stands that hold MacBook Pros. And what I don't think people get is sheet music, especially for classical stuff, it needs to be portrait. That's how orchestra music goes. You cannot turn your MacBook... you can turn a MacBook Pro 90 degrees on a music stand, but it's not going to go well. And there's no apps that function that way in order to do it. So it's not a good
Also, that's not any easier than just putting paper on a music stand. If you're doing all that work, just put if you're going to do that to your MacBook Pro, just put paper. Yeah.
And I did share this picture, by the way. I just wanted to share this because this was very precarious. But
that's put my body horror right there.
That is body horror. I put my M3 MacBook Pro on this music stand precariously, and I said, "Yeah, this is great. This works great."
You didn't do that. You just made Dolly create that for you.
No, I did that. I tightened that nut as hard as it would go, and I put my MacBook Pro on this music stand.
Oh man!
So I'm just arguing for form factor. So that's one argument. And for everyone saying just use paper. I used to play in jazz groups, and the fake books you would have to bring to these jazz gigs would be this thick because it would have a bunch of jazz charts that you might just pick randomly. And if you have to carry multiple fake books plus a few sheets of folders of sheet music, having Fourscore, which is the app that I use for sheet music on iPad, is amazing. So anyway, that's that case. Obviously, I talk about editing podcasts all the time. Do people need to buy the most expensive iPad right now? No. You don't need to. If you can, and you want to get the big iPad, I think an M4 iPad Pro is going to last you a really long time. And like what you said, Apple's probably well, why not? Why would we put an M3 in the iPad when we could put an M4 and make the technology as good as possible? Because like we've been discussing, the lifespan of these devices, I think even iPads probably have a longer lifespan than Macs, although it will remain to be seen with the whole M1 Mac generation. We're still early in that. I think the lifespan of iPads, the resellability, the hand-me-downness, these are all adjectives that don't exist. But the hand-me-downness of iPads to kids and family, that's what's happening in my family. And it's, again, the longevity of iPad is beneficial. Is it really expensive to get an iPad Pro? Yes. Do most people just need to get an iPad Air? Probably. And we're going to talk about like which one to buy. And honestly, I've had a couple of people message me and they're like, I am on a budget, but I would like a really good iPad. What do you suggest? And I'm like, if you're on a budget, an M1 iPad Air is great.
Yeah.
That's a great option. Or if you want to get an M1 because you want a big screen, get an M1 iPad Pro 12.9 inch. That's a great device. Like it's an M1. Yeah. It's a big screen and it still has all the Apple Pencil benefits. The one that I struggle to recommend still is that base model, especially when I know they're going to be using Apple Pencil, because I still feel like the Apple Pencil situation is a little weird on that with the physical USB-C charging and all that. I feel like it's not going to be a great first iPad Apple Pencil experience, but I don't know. People get mad about iPads and like, I don't know.
I think that the argument that the iPad is extremely overpowered for its software is fair, right?
It's fair.
I think it's fair, but I think the people who are making that argument mostly just want the iPad to do Mac things, and I think the way Apple looks at it is like, but we have a thing that does that. We have a Mac that does Mac things, right?
Right.
And if you look at the millions and hundreds of millions of people who use Apple devices, most people are using a MacBook Air for like work, where they're doing email and internet stuff, the browser stuff, right? Like if you work, most places where you would work, all of the things you could do on a Chromebook. You shouldn't, but you could do most of them on a Chromebook.
Sure.
Or some kind of device like that. Maybe you're not on Google's Workspace or you're on Microsoft or whatever. But like, so you're using their laptop for that, and then if they have an iPad, it's like for Disney Plus and for like whatever. Like that's just the way that most people work. So the idea of like, why would you spend $1,200, $1,500, $3,600 on an iPad doesn't make any sense. And even for like you and I mean, you edit a podcast on an iPad Mini. You don't actually need an M4 for that. I don't. But so we're in a weird use case situation, right? But there are people. The iPad Pro isn't even really for you and I. Let's just like be honest. It's just not. It's like because we're not doing the kinds of things that we might be doing that people might use Final Cut Pro or Logic or Procreate. Like let's just be honest. Like the best use case of an iPad is for an artist, right? And what I mean by an artist is like someone who draws and sketches and does things, or there's an app for the iPad called SketchUp, which like uses the LiDAR sensor to scan your room and then create like a 3D rendering of it plus a floor plan, and then you can manipulate that and it'll show you that. Like that's the kind of use cases that the iPad Pro is really designed for, and the power really, like the processing power really makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So I do understand why it's confusing to people. I don't think they're putting macOS on this thing. Like I just don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think it's going to happen. I understand why people want it. And I will make the concession that, this iPad Pro, when I get it, it's going to have the latest Apple Silicon chip. It's more powerful than the current MacBook Air because that's M3. This would be M4. I got a 1 terabyte, which has 16 gigs of memory. Like this M4 iPad Pro has more powerful guts than this MacBook Air. And I cannot do certain things like run audio hijack on my iPad so I can record audio how I want. And I will admit, there are those kinds of use cases where I do wish iPadOS would move forward. And also because Apple has announced this in events. I think it was WWDC, maybe it was last year or 2 years ago, where they said desktop class apps to the iPad. Like that was the thing Apple said they're going to open and allow for. And I personally, yes, Final Cut Pro is there. It's not the same as the desktop app. Same with Logic. But I wish I could do more of those kinds of things. Not that I want macOS, because I don't. I actually like iPadOS when I'm using my iPad. But to be able to just go in and choose an audio input device versus output device or run an app like Audio Hijack where I can record audio from an app and also record locally to the device, those are things that, a $3,600 device probably should do. But not that I'm trying to be sympathetic, but I also understand there's probably 1,000 very specific use cases like that iPad users around the world would want. And I suppose Apple is just making the biggest groups of people use cases, whether that's artists or, the Logic Pro 10. I've heard from a lot of people that that's actually closer to the desktop version than Final Cut. So anyway, I also understand that consternation, and I feel a little bit of that too. Maybe WW this year. I know we say this every year. Maybe iPadOS will see something.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I heard a recent... So the fact that the Vision Pro can virtualize your Mac, people are like, well, why can't you just make the iPad do that? Right? You like, let me run my Mac virtually on an iPad, which you kind of can with Sidecar. Like that's...
I use screens all the time on my iPad too to just control my Mac Studio.
Yeah, so what they mean though is let me like just open Mac apps or whatever. But yeah. Have you ever used a Surface Pro, Steven?
No, I actually have not.
Which is probably the reason people keep asking this is because like there are Windows devices that are like this.
Yeah.
But Windows is atrocious as a tablet. It's just not. It's not made for that. And the Surface Pro, because you've decided to make it a tablet, is not a great computer. Right? It's super limited. We had one time. I don't think it was a review unit because I wouldn't do this to a review unit. We had one at one point. This was during COVID, and we were mostly using it as like a Zoom machine, right? For one of our, we needed more devices, and the other thing that one of our kids would play Minecraft on it, and that thing, I was worried about like 3rd-degree burns on the back, like on the top of my kid's legs, because it's not happy. It's real angry right now when you try to do anything. And I don't think Apple wants to create an experience. That's not to say, I mean, the M4 can clearly run Mac OS. The M3 runs Mac OS really well. So does the M2 and the M1. It'd be fine, right? So I understand that is true. I just think Apple sees this as very different products. And yes, it would be really nice. Like people want to be able to move them closer together. But I think that that's such an individualistic look at it. It's like, I want to be able to do this thing. And that's perfectly valid. It's just that Apple is not designing devices for Steven and for Jason and for whoever else. It's designing them for literally more than 1 billion people, right? That are buying iPhones and Macs and iPads and stuff. So it's hard to have that like broader perspective, but I just think Apple sees these as very different devices. So that doesn't explain why people get mad, because I think the iPad is amazing. Like if I had to choose, gosh, I'd still probably have to have a Mac. But if I had a choice, like just based on what I'd want, I'd probably just use the iPad most of the time.
Right. Okay. So I want to take a quick break, and then we're going to answer the community questions, which will hopefully then lead us to what iPad you should buy. And we have to talk about the Crush ad, because I have some thoughts on that too. But I just want to say this episode is brought to you, all of those who support the show directly, and there are more of you all the time, and so we so appreciate it. Not that they'll hear this, but this is for you who's considering supporting the show. We ask that you support the show with $5 a month, $50 a year. You can do it either in Apple Podcasts or via Memberful. You can go to primarytech.fm and click bonus episodes, and you get an ad-free version of the show. And, you know, we have a couple sponsors that are considering, so eventually there will be an ad-free show, but this section will be cut out. Plus, you get the bonus episodes every week. We're going to be talking about Jason burying an Ethernet cable, which is very exciting, and we might talk about I'm excited about it. And I think I'm going to talk about my Apple event setup in the bonus episode, because we had a, what do I do to cover an Apple event from home, because I had a question about that. So anyway, support the show, get access to bonus episodes. You get the whole back catalog of bonus episodes as well. But if you can't do that, we invite you to join our community for free, social.primarytech.fm, and you can be a part of it there and support the show with a 5-star rating and review in Apple Podcasts, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. All those links are in the podcast show notes, and so we thank you for those who already support the show and those of you who will very soon. All right, let's go to our community, Jason. We have questions here. Real quick, we got to be quick because we're running out of time.
Okay.
Here we go. These are the questions submitted by our wonderful community members. Number 1, Serge CJ91 says, is it worth getting a new iPad Pro if I have the iPad Pro M1? No, probably not.
No, that's probably the right answer. It's probably not. I mean,
unless,
M1 to M4, there's definitely benefits, but like if you love your iPad Pro, the M4 is probably not the reason to do it. It's just like the OLED screen would be really nice, but I just don't think that's worth $1,000.
Is the live camera, the Final Cut camera app, and the multi-view thing, is that going to be compatible with older iPads, or is that just the new one?
So yes, it's actually funny. I'm going to make this quick as I can. I have to look at the page. But when you look at the introduction for both Logic and for Final Cut Pro for iPad 2, they have a bunch of footnotes. And some of the footnotes say require M series, and some of them say recommended. It's just really funny the way they distinguish. But basically, everything with an M processor will be able to get basically most of the features of that. So.
Oh, that's great. I still remember on the old school like video game boxes you would buy for your computer growing up, and at the bottom it would say PC requirements. and then recommended,
Right.
which it'll run if you have this, but it's not going to look
Right.
good. Daryl's asking, are you going to be switching to iPad Pro for podcast editing, or will you stick with the iPad Mini? I'm going to be editing on the iPad Pro because I got the 11-inch, which is going to feel better editing, and also the Pro Motion. I still miss that. Even after editing on the iPad Mini for months, I miss the Pro Motion when I'm scrubbing really fast back and forth. All the waveforms are just a blur on the iPad Mini because there's no Pro Motion, but I know on my iPad Pro, there's a lot more clarity there. So,
Yep.
yeah. Still waiting for my Mini. Am I waiting in vain? Well, we talked about that.
Yeah,
you might
sorry.
be.
I don't think... I don't know. I mean, I'd love to be surprised, but...
Yeah. And then, let's see. So, Uwe, I think it's from Germany. He was the one asking about the keyboard function rows as the MacBook. We answered that. Are the colors really that light? The blue-violet looks nearly indistinguishable from the white. How are the iPad Air colors that you saw?
Yeah, they're pretty, calling them colors is generous. But I think on the live episode, I was a little bit kinder. And then since then, I had some briefings and stuff like that where I paid a little bit closer attention. And in a certain light, they just all look the same. And this is like the base, the 10th gen iPad. Those colors are great. The backs of the iMacs, those colors are great. These are just slightly tinted versions of gray. So...
Space black, space dark gray, space gray,
space blue gray, space purple.
He's also asking how much does the keyboard weigh? I know it's lighter. I don't know the exact amount, but is it? I mean, it's noticeably lighter than the old Magic Keyboard, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't remember what the specs are. I will tell you it feels lighter. Right.
Okay.
It doesn't feel like a brick.
That's nice.
The previous version.
He asked how much sharpness is removed from the Nano-Texture. We'll have to review it. I showed that video. If you're not using it in direct sunlight, I don't know. I feel like I would still go glossy for most people.
Yeah, and I think that that photo that I shared with you does a pretty good job of illustrating how much sharpness you're going to lose because it was basically a straight on. I mean, it was only the screen or the lock screen, so I realized there wasn't a bunch of text on it or anything. But you're going to lose. So the screen is still just as sharp. It's just going to appear less sharp to your eye. So. This is the picture you're talking about, right? No, that's the glossy one. I was talking about the
that's the
Nano-Texture one. Yeah. So
okay, yeah, I'll put that picture in the chapter art for sure. iPadOS 18. He's asking about. We're going to talk about that when we get closer to Dub and make some predictions there. And Ryan Off was asking, besides the function keys and being lighter, what else has improved over the new Magic Keyboard versus the old? Bigger trackpad with haptic feedback.
Yep.
And the aluminum palm rest
deck. Yeah, the deck is all aluminum. So on the outside, they actually look basically the same. From if you fold it up and set it down, they basically look the same because it still has the same silicone cover on the outside or whatever. But yeah.
All right, and the last question on the iPads, and then we're going to move on. Someone asked me via DM. They've never owned an iPad, but want to take notes and be portable access for work. Would you recommend the Air or the new cheap entry one? So she kind of narrowed it down to should I get the Air? Should I get the entry model? And I'll be curious what you would suggest for someone like this. I personally recommended her get the iPad Air with because the Apple Pencil with the magnetic attachment and charging, I think is a much better experience, especially if she's taking notes. And you can use the Magic Keyboard with the Air. You can't use the Magic Keyboard with the entry model. You can get it, it has its own smart keyboard folio. But I think the Magic Keyboard is just a better typing experience and better lappability. I've made that a word, I think, at this point. But I find the Magic Keyboard better at lappability. So I suggested the iPad Air. I said, if you want to save some money, you can get the M1 iPad Air. I think that's still a great machine. Still works with a Magic Keyboard and the Apple Pencil. So that would work. But if you can swing the new one, it's got the camera in the right place. So what would you suggest?
Yeah, I do just want to say that the 10th gen iPad is very, very good.
It's good, yeah.
And it's also a lot cheaper now. It's only $349. In my opinion, that's a steal, right? And if what you're saying you want to do is to be able to take some notes and have some portable access for work, I would not in any way hesitate to recommend to someone the 10th generation iPad. Just to be clear, I think probably a slightly better option would be the M1 MacBook Air. iPad Air. Here we go again. I think that's still the best I mean, the funny thing is, if this was like, what laptop should I get? All I want to do is like take notes and have more. I'd be like, get an M1, go to Walmart, buy an M1 MacBook Air, right? Like,
I would say M2, but sure.
No,
sure,
I would say M1. It is so good for $600. Like, come on, you can't even beat that. So
the value is the highest.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I think it's great. So, I definitely don't think you need a Pro. I don't even think you need the M2 Air, to be perfectly honest with you. It's just probably not. I mean, although the M2 Air is like a good price, like it's not. Yeah. It's $600.
Form factor. The newer form factor.
The trick would be, well, it doesn't really have. It's just got a camera in a different place. The M2
MacBook
iPad.
Air?
No. I'm going back to the iPads.
Yeah.
Words are hard. I'm sorry, but I think that if you're looking at the iPad, like you don't necessarily need it. I was just trying to figure out you can get the M1 Air refurbished for $399. Like that's a pretty good price. Like that's $50 more, I probably would recommend that. Although you're only getting half the storage. But anyway, if you're not going to do a lot of Zoom calls and you don't care about where the camera is, I think either the M1 iPad Air. But the smart keyboard folio is weird. It's not as lappable, whatever that word is supposed to mean. But,
lappability. Has low lappability.
I don't even want to say it out loud. But it feels exactly like the Magic Keyboard when you're typing on it, just to be clear. Okay. It just folds out kind of weird. It is a whole lot lighter than the Magic Keyboard, so there's that, which is kind of nice. So I think Steven's recommendation is right. M1 iPad Air, probably the right recommendation in that particular case. Steven's pretty down on the 10th gen iPad. I just want to come here, and as someone who has one, we own one, and our kids use it, and all they use it for is like Minecraft. So we're not getting the most out of it. But if I had to, if my iPad Pro died and I needed to go somewhere where I was going to use an iPad, I'd have no hesitation taking that with me.
The only hesitation I have is the Apple Pencil situation, just because it's so convenient, the wireless charging.
Yeah, but I don't even know, like, for what we're talking, like, this is the person's first iPad. They have no history with the Apple Pencil.
Yeah, but anyway, okay, yeah, I get it. That
adds another $129 to the purchase price. So
fair, yeah, that's fair. All right, well, you crushed my dreams, kind of like how Apple crushed a bunch of creative tools.
Yeah,
I was trying to make that transition. Okay, I just want to talk about this because Tim Cook, he posted the Crush ad that was played during the iPad event. And the ad is basically this massive hydraulic press. I'm really hoping they release a behind-the-scenes footage because I want to know how much of this is, practical, and if there was any CG. I have a feeling like Apple's been doing a lot of practical stuff, like even with their like Apple Watch faces that look like fluid metal or whatever. So I have a suspicion that this is a lot of practical stuff, and because if this is CG, it would be incredible. But anyway, so he posted the video on X. And it's got over 47 million views right now. A lot of the comments are negative underneath. Sebastian DeWitt, who formerly worked at Apple, he worked on the iCloud and design. He talks that it's just a terribly cruel image. I posted that I was a trumpet major, and seeing that as the first thing crushed was kind of sad for me. Hank Green, the science guy, you are today's discourse. And then there's some other responses that I want to get into, but overall, really negative. Variety put together a bunch of negative responses, including actor Hugh Grant, that literally said it looks like, quote, the destruction of the human experience. TechCrunch said the Apple Crush ad is disgusting. That is by Devin Coldaway, and his has, quoted many people, linked to many people. And this is, I think, I really like this take. This helped kind of articulate what I was feeling. And this is Adam Lissagore, who is he makes sandwich video. He does a lot of video stuff, but longtime Apple World, huge Apple Vision Pro proponent. He's got an app for that. But he said, I'll read it for our audio listeners, and I'll link to the tweet in the show notes. Talking about this Crush ad, the advertisers intended to visualize compression of value, which would have been easy to do in a cool way, and instead showed destruction of value with a few boldly misguided choices, such as making everything go boom, kill, cry, instead of melt, blend, joy. So on the plus side, kind of cool to get an opportunity for culture to talk about how a well-intended image released by a beloved company that typically communicates so responsibly went awry and said the completely wrong thing. What will the response and the backlash? So anyway, I thought that was interesting. The destruction of value versus the compression of value, which I think is what Apple was trying to communicate, saying that all of this creative stuff, instruments, art, music. It can all be done in this paper-thin device. I get that that's the message of the ad, but the portrayal, I think me specifically being like a musician and the first thing seeing crushed is a trumpet, which is I literally have a degree in trumpet performance. It just felt not disrespectful, but it just felt a little unsavory, because it's like these are still tools of art that, if you go back, I forget where I put it, but like the picture I posted about the iPad is literally me playing trumpet and my wife playing piccolo with an iPad. Like, these are not tools that go away because of the iPad, but rather can be complemented, and the iPad can complement them. And I feel like that message was a little lost in how Apple portrayed it. And I thought there was also another interesting take. Sebastian DeWitt again said that, we don't see this a lot if you're in the U.S. or in a country where you have your Twitter set to your region, that there's been a Japanese backlash to this, and that there's a belief in the Japanese culture, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but sokumogami, which is the idea that creative tools can possess a spirit of their own, which is a cool notion. And while I'm not sure if my trumpet has a spirit of its own, I do feel very attached to, like, when I see a whole piano just get destroyed, like, there's something weird about it. And then there was a response of someone just put the video in reverse and said, "Here, we fixed it, Apple. You should have just done this instead."
Yeah.
Which, honestly, it did feel good. And then you, of course, had your article saying, it was a heartbreaking iPad Pro ad for some people. So I might say a little more, but I don't know. What do you think about the ad? Because I'm curious in the room response, too, because you saw this with a bunch of other creatives in the same room.
Yeah, I have 3 thoughts. The first one is, I do want to thank Apple for giving us the best featured image for every article, because every article used the exact same thing. So I do appreciate that piece of this. I just want to throw that out there right real quick. And in the room, people laughed when that happened, because it was kind of funny, right? And it was what you expect. My take on this, and the reason I wrote about it, was basically, I think it was pretty obvious what Apple was trying to do, which I think Adam Lissagor's take was similar to what I wrote, which is that they were trying to tell a specific story about how the iPad can do all of these things. And look, it incorporates all of these creative tools into it, or it's a companion for all of these creative tools, because Apple has historically been like, they've prided themselves on being a partner for artists and for creatives, right? Steve Jobs especially when it came to the music industry, right? He genuinely had so much affection for that.
They used to have live music performances.
Yeah, John Mayer, like they just exactly. So
see ya,
But somebody came up with a clever idea, and unfortunately, the clever idea got in the way of the story they were trying to tell. And it was such a near miss. Like, it could have been, like Adam said, it could have been great. There's so many great ways they could have communicated that. It's just that no one in the room saw it from the perspective of an artist or a creative. And like, I play guitar and I play piano. I have a guitar. No kidding, when I was in college, I drove all the way to Vancouver, British Columbia, and got to pick out the pieces of wood that were used in this guitar. Cool. It's not even a great guitar. Like, it's not amazing. Like, but it is it is mine. And I someday hope one of my children will want to play it. Like, there's the idea of crushing it is crushing, And so in the room, I don't think anybody reacted super negatively when we were watching it in the middle, because first of all, most of us are just trying to take notes. Right. Yeah. And when they show an ad, just to be honest, it's a time to like write notes about things that just happened. Yeah. But also, I think everyone in that room is really familiar with the way Apple tries to talk about things. So it was easy to see it as the story they were trying to tell. But then when you filter it through you take off the lens of the journalist who's trying to take notes and whatever, and put on the idea of like, if I'm a trumpet player, or if I'm a photographer or I'm a guitar player or a painter, and I'm just seeing all of that stuff destroyed, and in its place is this iPad. The other thing I mentioned is that the miss for Apple was it just became another tech company that believes that its tech can replace all of the things that you love, right? And it takes that humanity, and it's like, nope, we'll just give you a piece of aluminum and glass. You don't need all of these tools. And people are like, yeah, but it's kind of, honestly, not to go too far down a rabbit hole, it's the whole thing behind like the self-driving cars. Like, we're going to make it so no one has to drive a car. And it's like, I like driving my car. I don't want to get into a car that I can't enjoy the experience of driving, right? It's like no, but this will be better. You don't understand. The reason I have a car isn't like, because if that's the case, I'd move to a city that has really great public transportation and I'd just get on the bus or the subway or whatever. Like, I enjoy driving the car. I don't always enjoy driving in traffic. That's fine. I think that's where Apple went wrong. It's like, you created an amazing thing. It does amazing things. You lost sight of who your audience was, and especially when you did it this way. So I think I'm really interested to see if or how Apple will respond. I tried very hard yesterday to get a response from Apple because it felt like the kind of moment where someone needs to come out and say, hey, we love artists. And we realized that this came across different from what we were trying to say. We wanted to create tools to support what you do, not to destroy or to replace it.
Right.
Man, I really wanted to write about that, but it hasn't happened yet.
I was actually interested if they were going to take, like, Tim Cook might delete this tweet, or if they were going to take the YouTube video down, which they have not. Like, all of this is still up, and there's still conversation ongoing about it. And again, like if this was all practical, the time it probably took, the planning, like, it's an impressive video, like, from a filming standpoint and effects standpoint. Like, kudos to, I'm sure there were many hours of work that have gone into it. One of the other conversations around this is, with the rise of AI generated content, visual effects artists literally not having maybe as much work because AI can do it better. This feels, in this moment, this cultural moment with all the AI stuff, it feels a little more close to home, because it's like, oh shoot, all those things that maybe have been valuable for years, it's not valuable anymore. And the tech companies who also create this AI stuff don't think it's valuable. Oh no, what does that mean for me? And I will say also, I showed this video to my wife, who's, again, a professional flutist, and several friends who are musicians. And it was funny to see their reactions. I should have filmed it, but I didn't want to be weird. And like, whenever an instrument, or like the piano and guitar especially, like, as those were destroyed, like, I could see them wincing and kind of reacting each time. And again, like, the trumpet being the first thing just totally just hurt. But that piano, like, there was wincing at every moment, but they still laughed when that little yellow smiley face gets stuck at the end. Like, everybody laughs at that part. So I understand, like, it's trying to be jovial and it's saying all this fits in the iPad, but just something about it didn't feel great. And again, I get what they were going for, and I feel like, even the record player, I think, is an interesting, because that's one of the things that they show in this video, where, like, there's been a resurgence of LPs. Like, people love buying records and getting these sound systems. It's like, actually, people want some of this analog stuff back to kind of, like, as a response to what's going on. And so I'm very curious what the response will be. I in no way think that Apple doesn't value artists or doesn't value these tools. I don't think that at all. I just think the message they were trying to communicate got muddied in the way they portrayed it, and that was not great. Actually, there was the Riverside CEO, which, disclosure, I work for Riverside, but he actually posted a video. I'm not sure where it is. Again, there's just so much discourse about this.
Right.
But Riverside did an ad where basically, like, using CG kind of took things like microphones and speakers and melded that into an iPhone to show that the new Riverside app is capable of all these things. And honestly, I do feel like it was much more respecting of the tools than this. I think there was just kind of a, I don't know, lack of, not respect. I don't know what a better word is, but anyway, that's how I felt about it.
Well, and it didn't help that I was just looking while you were talking, which means I wasn't listening to you, so I'm sorry.
Fine. That's totally fine.
I was trying to find, there was a point at which John Ternus actually used the phrase about the iPad Pro that it crushes, right? I mean, obviously he's setting up the video, whatever, but I just feel like, someone had the idea, and they were probably talking about the fact that the M4 is so, fast, so much better, so whatever, but I just feel like they just lost sight of the narrative that they were trying to tell. Yeah.
So let us know what you think. We might start a whole discussion in the community about this ad, because I'm curious the overall response. But
yeah.
All right, this is like super lightning round, and then we're going to get to our bonus content. But real quick, I do want to mention The Verge leaked the Sonos headphones that should be releasing soon, the Sonos Ace. And considering AirPods Max are still in the wind. Will we get an updated version? Who knows? These over-the-ear headphones might, I don't know, take that top spot. I want to try these. I think I'm excited. They have USB-C. I'm sure they do. So you don't care about this because don't you have like a Bowers and Wilkins like fancy?
I got
headset?
like 8 pairs of headphones and I never wear any of them. So I mean, yeah, I have 2 pairs of Sonys. I have the XM5s and XM4s, and I have a pair of Bowers and Wilkins. That's what I prefer. I like those the best. So,
well, I'm curious. So Sonos headphones coming soon. Disney and Marvel announced that there's going to be a new immersive app for Apple Vision Pro for the What If universe. And after I tried the Gucci thing that you recommended and the state Casey List from ATP, like that was really a cool experience and actually gave me a reason to charge my Apple Vision Pro and try it on. So this What If app, very curious. I think this is the kind of experience that would make Apple Vision Pro worth it. So I'm excited to try it. Do you still have your review unit sitting around?
I use it every day, Steven.
Do you for
I
real?
don't understand. Yes, I use it every single day.
Wait, you use it every day?
I use the Vision Pro. I've used the Vision Pro every day. I didn't use it on Tuesday because I was traveling, but I use it every single day. Not all day. No, I every morning I use it, and in my mind it's like such a great experience for some of the things that I do in the morning, like going through feeds to see what's going on. Like I will use Safari. I will use different it's funny, but like I'll just open the tech meme site and be like, what happened? What's going on? And read and just like
you do all that on Apple Vision Pro?
I do all of it on an Apple Vision Pro. Yep. I the first time I look at my email in the morning is in the Vision Pro. I know you think that this is crazy.
Wait a minute.
But yeah. Every day I use it. I'm serious.
I didn't know. Wait a minute. This would have been a whole topic. I had no idea. Wait a minute.
We'll save it for next week, I guess.
Yeah, we'll save it for next week.
There won't be anything to talk about.
Magic keyboard and trackmad?
No. I'm using it the way God and Tim Cook intended.
You're looking at those tiny links on Tech Meme with your eyeballs and tapping them?
They're not tiny. It's like the size of Yosemite. No, it's not that big. But.
Oh my goodness. Okay, we had to talk about this next week. Oh my!
I really don't understand. I'm being completely sincere. I use it every single day.
Oh my!
Now, just to be clear, I still would not have bought one, but I use it every single day.
An hour and 10 minutes in, this is the wildest news that I've heard all day.
Even better than the shortcuts on the Pencil Pro.
Actually, no, I'm still excited about the shortcuts on Apple Pencil Pro. But anyway, all right, we're going to talk about the Apple Vision Pro next week. Every day, my goodness. Okay, that's amazing. Real quick, we haven't talked a lot about HomeKit and smart home on this show, but I do have to mention Brilliant, which is a smart home panel. Also worked with HomeKit where you could like replace your light switches and use the Brilliant panel. They have run out of money, and it seems like
as they do.
And so they will say the devices will continue to operate as expected through this transition, whatever it looks like. But the main thing is about these Brilliant panels that you would control your smart home with, and I have one, is that because they work via the cloud, if the servers ever shut off on the company's side, your panels will stop working.
Oh, that's bad.
That's bad. And one of the reasons why we'll talk about HomeKit more in the future, but when you buy like a straight HomeKit device, like a Wemo plug or an Eve HomeKit Thread Matter plug, if the company just totally goes away tomorrow, shuts down their servers, whatever, it doesn't matter because those HomeKit devices will continue to work in your ecosystem for as long as you keep them. And that's a big difference between devices like this Brilliant panel, which are dependent on that cloud side, which there was another, I forget what the brand was before. I don't know if it was like Insteon or something. There was another smart home brand that went belly up and then basically you couldn't use any of the devices. So just be leery. I definitely don't buy any Brilliant panels right now. Just so you know. I
have a rule. This will help our listeners, and I mean this sincerely. And like I've got the Lutrons; those are great, but they don't require any software, right? There is an app, right? There's an app, but they don't. It doesn't make any difference. They do not require software to keep working. You should never, ever buy a device that you intend to keep for basically ever. And if you're installing light switches, you intend to keep them. Right. They should last for basically ever, unlike washers and fridges and that kind of stuff, apparently. But that depends on software updates. forever or is dependent on something existing somewhere else. TVs are the same way. If you buy a new TV, please turn off the Wi-Fi. You don't need software updates on that TV. As long as it continues to work exactly the same way as the moment you set it up, you should be good. It should just keep working, because guess what? TVs, that's what they did for a very, very long time. So just never buy a device that you intend to keep for more than 10 years or forever that requires a third party like that. So
precisely. All right, last two things, and we'll have to save our personal tech for next week. We'll talk about email providers. I saw this article: Walmart shopper data will soon feed targeted ads on Disney Plus and Hulu. This is an agreement that Disney has made with Walmart, where shopping data through Walmart will then create targeted ads on the streaming service that you might see as you're watching Disney Plus. And frankly, I think it's gross. And they're supposedly going to protect user data, and like theoretically that data won't be shared. And this reminds me, we might need to do like a book club corner in the future. I read The Power of Habit. It's a book by Charles Duhigg. And in that book, he talks about, have you ever read that book?
No.
It's a great book, but he talks about like the marketing and like data practices of some of these large tech companies. And, you know, so many people you probably have heard like, you know, all these speakers are listening to me because when I talk about cruises, then all I see are ads for cruises on Facebook. And it's like, you know, actually the ad tech is so good that it doesn't need to listen to the words you say,
right?
Because your browsing, purchasing, searching behavior across all the different platforms, whether that's just Google search or Facebook or whatever, it is so good at targeting what you're interested in. Like the words you say are like inconsequential. So
right.
Like A, like they're probably not unless it's an Alexa, and B, like it doesn't matter. Like, and there's crazy stories that I might share in the future. But anyway, this like Walmart Disney Plus partnership, I'll have to read more into it, but I don't know, it seemed kind of gross.
Yeah, I mean, so the flip side of that is, and I mean, I actually need to read that because I just wrote it down. Like, I got to put my Vision Pro on and read some stuff. But we think about like the tech companies and tracking and stuff, but retail shopping is by far the most tracking intensive thing, because you get like you'll get up here, the grocery store will send you like this coupon book of things to buy, and my wife is always like, this is exactly what we need. I'm like, yeah, it's because it's exactly what you bought last week, and they know exactly what you bought, and they just send you coupons so you'll come back and buy more of those things, right? And so we don't, it's, you know, we're, the analogy we use in our mind is like, how is this even possible? How do they know what kind of shampoo I use in the shower? How creepy is it that they must be spying on me when I take a shower? No, you went to the grocery store and you bought it, and when you did, you scanned your membership card and then you paid for it with your credit card. Guess what? They know all of that stuff. Like they know more than you think. And so there's probably going to be some kind of a deal where it's like, link your Walmart and your Disney Plus accounts and we'll give you something, right? Some kind of thing. And in the background, they can link those two. Actually, it doesn't even matter if you use the same email address, for example.
Yeah, same
right?
email. Yeah.
So
that's, people don't realize, like the same email address you might use for your credit card login, for your Target account, and then for your Disney Plus. Guess what? They know it all.
Yeah, they really do.
Yeah, it's less creepy that they're not listening to you, but actually more creepy because some of the precise targeting that they can do is wild. So anyway, last thing before we get to our bonus episode, this was kind of, well, not rumor, but Mark Gurman from Bloomberg, and then I think John Gruber kind of echoed the sentiment. Can John Ternus, the current head of hardware engineering, be the potential next CEO of Apple? John Ternus has been in a lot of keynotes. He basically did like a lot of the Mac announcements in the past couple of years. He was a huge part of this iPad event, including the iPad Pro. I feel like, kind of makes sense. Kind of make like, I know maybe Craig Federighi doesn't want the CEO spot. He felt like more of the, I don't know, face for a long time. But
yeah, well, so to be fair, we have a distorted perspective of this mostly because of Steve Jobs. But being a good presenter is not the primary consideration for the CEO of a $2.5 trillion company. Just to be, but that said, think about all the people you've seen in any Apple event in, let's say, the last 5 years. Maybe with the exception of Craig Federighi, John Ternus is easily the best at doing that. He is by far the best. Like, he just is. He's the most natural talking. He's believable. He does not feel scripted. He is significantly better than Tim Cook. Like at that part of it, right? He's better than Jeff Williams. He's right. You know, Craig Federighi
He's
a good
charismatic.
sport. He's a very good sport, right? He's good, like, he's just good at doing that stuff. But I don't think that like the position that Federighi has in the organization would be the natural, move up to the CEO role. So, the article was just really interesting. It's like basically if Tim Cook were to like something happened to him today, the obvious replacement is Jeff Williams, the chief operating officer. But they're only 2 years apart in age.
Right.
So if in 3 or 4 years Tim Cook retires, you're not going to get 10 years out of Jeff Williams at that point. But so you need to look younger. And the most obvious, most high profile executive at that level at this point is John Ternus. And I think it'll be interesting because, Apple has had a number of CEOs, most of them in the dark, years when Steve Jobs was gone. But, there's Steve Jobs and then there's Tim Cook. For most people, that's it. It's those two. And they were very different people and they run the company in very different ways. So thinking about who comes next, if it's Jeff Williams, it's going to look a lot like it does right now, right? He's like Tim Cook mini. But if it'll be really interesting to see what happens next. But John Ternus right now, like he oversees all of hardware engineering. So like he knows his stuff.
I do see a lot of people saying, not necessarily people close to Apple, but just saying that Apple needs a product guy as the CEO next, like Steve Jobs was, being like the product visionary. I don't know if that's true or not. Like, I haven't really thought deeply about it, but I do like that idea, like that like a visionary CEO, like being the one, and Steve had a huge team around him. It's not like it was just Steve Jobs coming up with this stuff by himself, but I don't know.
Yeah, which of the big tech companies would they say have a product guy at the helm? Meta, maybe?
Question. Mark Zuckerberg.
Clearly, Mark Zuckerberg created Facebook, so I think he's a product guy. But like Satya Nadella is not purely a product guy. I mean, I guess Sundar Pichai at Google did at one point lead like Google Search, which is a fairly important product. Or Google, actually, it was maybe Google Chrome. Which either way, they're very important products to Google. But like that isn't the primary role of a CEO. There's no argument. No one can make the argument that Tim Cook is not one or two, in first or second place as most successful CEOs of all time, by the metric that matters for a CEO.
Especially, yes, for like making the company profitable and all that. But I don't know. Maybe it's because it felt different. Like Apple felt different having a product person as the CEO because it felt more innovative. I don't know. Like everything is rose-colored glasses too sometimes when you just look back and think about, iPhone launch, iPad launch, whatever. But
but Steve Jobs, like the point is Steve Jobs was a singular in person in this, in the way that, maybe not quite singular because you have people like Bill Gates, like there aren't going to be other Steve Jobses that are going to come in and take over. Like even if there was someone who might be, if Johnny Ive that would be terrible. But if Johnny Ive had taken over Apple, he's a product. He's like a design guy. He's one of Steve Jobs' closest, collaborators. But that he wouldn't be Steve Jobs.
I wonder. Johnny Ive probably loves this new iPad though, the thinnest Apple product ever created.
I don't know. Let's see.
I will say
it still has buttons on the side, so I'm not sure.
Oh, that is true. Still has buttons. I will say Tim Cook was pretty cool with these Nikes. Apparently, the Nikes that Tim Cook wore during the event were designed on iPad by Nike. So there you go.
Did you see that the event was partially edited on iPad?
It was partially edited, shot on iPhone. Yeah, they're just doing that now. They're just doing it. So
if you're releasing a product and talking about how it's going to be good for something, then you should dog food your own product. So
they did talk a lot about DaVinci Resolve when the scary fast behind the scenes thing that they edited in DaVinci. So, but anyway, all right, that's the show for today. We're going to go to a bonus episode. Jason's going to talk about his Ethernet cable. I'm going to talk about my pre-event setup. Join the community. Let us know what you'd like to hear about. We're definitely going to hear about Jason's Apple Vision Pro experience next week, in addition to reviewing the new iPads. I don't know how we're going to fit all that in, but we're going to do it.
I'm going to review the iPads with the Vision Pro on. How's that?
Amazing. I'll find, I didn't wear my AI pin today. I'll put on my AI pin, my glasses. I'm not going to hold the rabbit. Anyway, let us know what you think. Not yet. Give us a 5-star
That's an
rating.
AI device, friends. Just want to be clear. I'm not going to hold the rabbit. It's just
not holding. Oh, no. Yeah, no. I'm talking about the Rabbit R1. I don't have a physical rabbit. Anyway, 5-star review. You know all the stuff to do. Links are down in the show notes. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're going to go record the bonus episode. If you support the show, we'll see you over there. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next week.